All right. We are back. Episode 15 of the Feel for the Game podcast on a rainy Tuesday night with some interesting Tuesday night football. We've got James Madison taking on Texas State right now. I think they just went up 14 to nothing. So we've got that live right now. Interesting game. James Madison's still in contention for the playoffs, is an unsung sneak in dark horse team. But we had a blast in Nashville this past weekend at a really awesome matchup. We got to go see Vanderbilt take on Missouri. Final score there, 17 to 10. Vanderbilt takes home a very close win. It was a lot closer than it looked, given the final play of the game being a Hail Mary that ended up being caught on inside of the half-yard line, being ruled complete after further review. As time expired, the game ended. Missouri did not get a chance to punch that in, and Vanderbilt comes away with a huge win against another ranked team at home. I had a blast. I'm glad we got to finally go see Diego Pavia play a football game.
It was a really fun experience, and it was kind of weird being at Vanderbilt too because I've watched a bunch of games on there on TV over the years, but I never thought I'd be there just because they were always not good and stuff. But being there was kind of surreal, and they were this good.
Yeah, I think it was really neat. I kind of said as much during the game, just being in that stadium. Like, I think the last time I legitimately paid attention to a game where Ole Miss was playing at Vanderbilt was, I think, when we lost there. I can't remember, maybe even 2018 or 2017, but we went in there and lost. I think it was when they had Derek Mason and Kyle Shermer. But I remember that stadium looking so small, and they didn't even have that many fans. And I was just like, I can't believe we lost that game. It's just that was the Vanderbilt of old. You didn't want to lose to Vanderbilt. It's not a good look. That wasn't our best Ole Miss team, but going there and watching Vanderbilt be the home favorite top 10 team, like that just didn't feel right. I mean, it was awesome. Like I really enjoyed it, but that definitely was historical as we talked about last week. I think that's the first time basically that in this century almost since Vanderbilt's been a top 10 football team and getting to win back-to-back top 15 matchups at home. I don't know that they've ever done that. So this was a big week for Vanderbilt football, and it really kind of came down to a couple of plays in this game that capitalized on Vanderbilt's side. That one fumble on the missed handoff exchange from Missouri, I think it was in the third quarter, possibly. When that happened, that was a huge momentum shift. Vanderbilt gets down there and comes away with points. They broke off an 85-yard touchdown in this game. Um, the final score was 17 to 10. So that touchdown ended up being a crucial score in this game. I thought that the quarterback play was a really interesting metric in this game because Diego Pavia did not play his best football. Missouri's defense limited him very well. I thought they got good pressure. They created some timely turnovers. I didn't think he had too many bad passes in this game. There were some sketchy ones. The interception really wasn't even that sketchy. It just got batted up in the air. But he didn't have his best performance. He had one of the best plays I've seen him have all season get taken back from a penalty. He reversed field like twice on a goal line touchdown run, which had like two different holding calls on it, which
I
was
think they called
unfortunate.
three holdings on that. It was something crazy.
It was probably one of the coolest runs I've seen in a while, but that the stadium was going berserk. Even though he had already, we everybody kind of knew it was a penalty, so they were going to call it back. He still played that play 110% and ended up putting the ball in the end zone, which was like, I mean, it. He can do that kind of stuff. Like just because there was a penalty doesn't mean that that doesn't really count for something. Like he's an absolute stud, and any guy who can make those kinds of plays deserves to be in the Heisman conversation like he is. But I still don't feel like he had his best game. As far as being a passer in this game, it was very average, pedestrian numbers. I think he had one touchdown and a pick. And then running the ball had one of his lower games total wise of the season. They got a lot of pressure on him, got to him in the backfield a couple times, but he played just well enough for this football team to have a chance and be in control there at the end.
I think there is something to be said too that he can play that way, and Vandy can still beat a top 15 team.
Yeah,
Last year, that wouldn't have been the case.
that plays a lot into my pick for their game going into this week, which I'll get to. But the fact that they've shown that they can win different ways, and we've talked about this with other teams, like A&M, for instance. Like they've won in shootouts all season, they've won in blowouts, they've won in slugouts, they've won in all sorts of different kinds of games. Vanderbilt's starting to do the same thing. I haven't seen them get into a big shootout yet. I don't know that this team is going to end up in a shootout. Not only do I not see them scoring 45, I don't see anybody scoring 45 on them unless they have an injury at quarterback or something. But I think it's just a really competitive football team that controls the game and controls the clock really well. The play calling is very timely. It reminds me a lot of Ole Miss when it's time to make big plays. It's not just the players going out of their way and making an average play look really good. It's really good players with really good play calling making something really great happen. So I love what I'm seeing from Clark Lee and that staff and what they're able to do with the guys they've got. They just make it happen. So I have a hard time picking against Vanderbilt in some of these games moving forward, but they look great. Let's talk about Missouri a little bit. Obviously, Bo Previously got hurt late in this game. I think that it came out that he had a dislocated ankle at the goal line. No bone fractures or anything like that, so nothing severe. There's a slight chance he comes back at some point in the postseason, depending on where they end up, which is most likely going to be in like the Outback Bowl, sadly for them. But I would assume we see him maybe one more time this season, if not twice, if he plays against Arkansas to end the season. But that stunk. I hated that for Missouri, but Matt Zollers came in and played some pretty daggum good football in the last quarter of this football game.
I was impressed with him. He was a little bit indecisive, but I mean, you would expect that from a dude, a true freshman, getting thrown into a game like that. But I like what I saw. I think they'll be in decent hands in the few games that they have to start him.
I was worried because Sam Horn was their backup going into the season, and they had two guys. It was Bud Pribula and Sam Horn that were dual threat guys that we didn't really know much about, unproven. Sam Horn goes in. I think he had like a huge run on his first play. It's like 20 yards or something. And the next play, he got hurt. Like bad break. I think he broke his tibia.
This was week 1 against Central Arkansas, wasn't
Literally,
it?
it was the first game. And so he goes out, and everybody's like, okay, Bo Pribula season. It's time for him to roll. And he did. And he took off, and we kind of forgot about Sam Horn. And then Bo Pribula goes down in this game, and I'm like, oh crap! Like Missouri doesn't really have a guy, do they? We were wondering who the heck they were even going to put on the field because I didn't know who Matt Zollers was. And one of the Missouri fans sitting next to us kind of explained to me that he was a new recruit coming in and hadn't really seen too much of him this season. So I figured that the game was going to get out of hand as soon as he got in the game. But I mean, he played relatively well considering how good Vandy's defense had played up to that point. Um, he had several throws that were really impressive to me. The fourth and long as the game was on the line. Usually that is a spot where veteran quarterbacks don't end up finding somebody and the game is over. Those are high pressure situations where you can't even count on your veteran quarterbacks in this sport to make those kinds of plays sometimes. And he finds an open receiver across the middle. It was a complete seed and gave them a chance to win the game with that Hail Mary or at least tie it if they were to have converted. And they were half a yard from doing so. If they make that Hail Mary, we're having a completely different conversation about who the MVP of this game is. And at the end of the day, Vanderbilt's run game ended up being what separated this. But I thought Zollers played really well. I'm looking forward to see how he plays against some other teams in full games moving forward. Now that some teams maybe have a little bit of tape on him, we'll see how he plays. But jumping into this game late with a little bit of a surprise to Vanderbilt's defense, not really knowing how to defend against him, he played really well. But yeah, I had a great time. This game was a lot of fun. It was low scoring, but if you really love college football, you can even enjoy these games. I feel like the big plays didn't always have to be touchdowns in this game. There were a lot of momentum swingers that weren't always field goals and touchdowns, um, especially that turnover where that Vandy player came down and stole that handoff. That was probably the biggest play in the game. And the crowd, I was impressed, was very loud. Never thought I would say that about a Vanderbilt game, but had a great time in Nashville. That was the first time I've been in Nashville in probably over a decade, and it was really cool. Had great food. Um, People were really nice. That was one thing I appreciated a lot about the atmosphere was that overall I didn't deal with any unpleasant people. If anything, I got heckled more by the Missouri fans I saw in the tunnel for wearing an Ole Miss polo than I did by any of the Vanderbilt fans. And of course, they weren't like super rude about it or mean, but like I didn't have a negative comment from a single Vanderbilt fan the whole game.
Well, there's one negative thing about Vanderbilt from this game, and that was them not letting us bring our chairbacks into the stadium.
I
That
didn't even
was
think about
freaking
that.
stupid.
No, we get to the gate, and sure enough, we bring our chair backs because we knew it was going to be bleacher style seats. And I figured that, I mean, no one's going to try to stop you from being comfortable at a football game. Like, why on earth would you do that? If you're not going to pay to have nice seating in your stadium, why on earth would you stop people from traveling to your stadium with better options? Which we get to the gate, and we're walking in, and the guy was like, I don't think you can bring that in here. And I looked at him, I was like, the chairbacks, we can't bring the chairbacks in there? He's like, I don't know, let me check. And this little short lady comes up to us, and she's like, no, no, you can't bring that in here. And I'm like, why? Like, what are we doing? Who are we hurting by bringing our chairbacks into this stadium? Like, I'm not bringing a bomb into your stadium. I'm not carrying a knife inside the back compartment of the seat. Like, if you want to check it, you can. But she made us go and she said we had to go put them in a locker somewhere. But I wasn't about to go do that, so we hid them behind some wall by the stadium and ended up getting them afterwards. But that was completely ridiculous. I get that there's clear bag policies and stuff like that, so you can't bring bags, but I don't know why on earth you couldn't bring a chair back into a stadium. Anyway, that's a long enough rant about chair backs, but that was probably the only negative thing that happened on the whole trip. I had a great time. That was just ridiculous. So, Vanderbilt, figure that out. Either get better seating or let us bring our chair backs into the stadium next time because that was stupid. All right. So, moving on, we're going to go ahead and get to our week 9 recap. We had first game, Texas at Mississippi State. I know this is one that you wish we could skip, Landon, but unfortunately, we got to talk about this game. I wish, and I genuinely did not know who Brandon Walker was until the beginning of this season, but I wish Brandon Walker was here right now so I could just kind of ask him a couple of questions about how he felt about that game because there's no one who could explain how the Mississippi State fan base feels after this game more than Brandon Walker. He's just going to say it in ways that a lot of other people probably wouldn't. A little more extreme. But anyway, he just kind of exemplifies to me the entire feeling around the program right now, which is unfortunately being pinned all on the head coach, which I think is ridiculous. But this game started off really promising for Mississippi State. We both picked the Bulldogs in this game. They get up by 17, fourth quarter ensues, and it just kind of all was downhill from there.
I don't even know what to say. Like, not even like extremely disappointing, but like not that surprising. I don't know. This is just the most typical like Mississippi choke job thing ever. Like this is just what happens.
Yeah, if Ole Miss was in the position that Mississippi State was in, I would say the same thing.
Just so snake bitten. Like it's just a curse. I
Yeah,
don't even know.
I,
I think if we can win an SEC game, we'll be okay. Like if we can beat Arkansas this week, I think this crap will end. But for now, we're just stuck in this junk.
Yeah, it's not a good feeling around the program, that's for sure. And I hate it. And as Mississippi State being my rival, like this should bring a lot of happiness to me. But I've been riding the bandwagon all season for Mississippi State. I had them going 4-1 to start the season with the upset against Arizona State, and I had them losing these next couple of games preseason. And then I was expecting them to probably pick up Arkansas and Missouri, if not somehow win the Egg Bowl to finish 6-6. But I had a lot of expectations for this team change once they beat Arizona State, which is it's not fair to Mississippi State to change your expectations after they've exceeded them so greatly and expect more. I did something bad. I shouldn't have done that. Anybody can learn a lesson from what I did wrong here. Don't go and bet Mississippi State right now. Don't go
Unless
and
it's
bet
just
them
to
3
cover
weeks
the
in a row.
spread. If it's to cover the spread, take that because we're 7-1 against the spread this year. But to outright win, no.
I bet Mississippi State outright to win the past 3 matchups they played in, and unfortunately for me, they had a chance in the past 2 of them and blew them. But I still think this team has a lot of talent. It's just it's not their year right now. It's better than last year, significantly better. Whenever State fans start to complain, I'm always going to point them back to 2-10, Toledo at home. Just remember those moments and tell me that you would rather go back to that, fire your head coach, and do that over again than be in the fourth quarter with ranked SEC teams, which is what's happening right now.
I
You are a
mean,
solid offensive line away from being probably 6-2 right now.
we're a few plays away from being 7-1 and like in the playoff conversation.
Yeah, I didn't
Like,
want to stretch it that much, but that's you
well, I
can say
mean,
that.
Tennessee. There's a couple things you could point to in that game, and then obviously Florida and Texas. Like
Yeah, I mean
those,
Florida.
100% should have been games that we won.
Florida's the game that out of all 3 of those, I'm like y'all should have won that game. Period. Like y'all should have won that game. I'm confident y'all's kicker gets out there on the 25-yard line. He's knocking that kick through.
Yeah.
But needless to say, all three of those ended up being losses for Mississippi State, unfortunately. The only real big loss was to Texas A&M, and I thought y'all played great in the first half for what it was worth. Offensive line just ended up selling y'all in most of these games. But Jeff Levy, I'm very familiar with this. He was the OC for Ole Miss for a while. I mean, he's been successful everywhere he's been up to this point. This is his first head coaching job. You just got to give guys time with the change in culture with coaching right now, it's starting to feel more like the NFL. And at Mississippi State, I don't think we're ready for that culture shift yet. We don't need to change expectations after a year and a half for these coaches. They haven't had time to get their players in. They barely even had time to get their coaching staff gelled together and get their program the way that they want it to be. Don't judge them off of a couple of really close losses. So that's really all I've got to say about Mississippi State. The offensive line sold this game. You got to give credit to Texas for storming back in this one. One of the big keys for me for Mississippi State in this game was do not kick it to Ryan Niblett. Please just punt it out of bounds. Punt safe. Whatever you have to do to not kick it straight to Ryan Niblett and give him the numbers blocking on the return. Sure enough, leading into the fourth quarter, he gets a punt return touchdown, which changes the whole game. If they don't get that punt return touchdown late, I think State probably wins. They find a way. That was such a huge momentum swing in the comeback that had already been started by State. You just can't do that. You know the identity of that team, and you still punt to them. I don't know how that happens. If anything, I'm the most mad at the special teams coach. I don't even know his name because I'm not a State fan, but I would be having some real conversations with him after that. Like, what on earth were you thinking? We have one job. You're the special teams coordinator. You know that this is one of the most dangerous special teams units in the country, and you're going to kick it to them in the fourth quarter when they're trying to come back? Crazy. Absolute drugs. But anyway, that's what happened. And they capitalized on it. Arch Manning exits the game in overtime with a concussion. Backup quarterback comes into the game and ends up throwing the game winning touchdown. When he completed that pass in the corner of the end zone, I thought it was out of bounds at first. I was like, dang, that was a really good throw.
I saw one replay and knew it was a touchdown.
And as soon as they replayed it again, I looked at you. You didn't say anything. I looked back at the replay where they paused it, and I didn't say a thing. I knew exactly what had happened. I was like, crap. I think Texas just won this football game because I did not feel good about State going back down and scoring at that point.
I knew we weren't going to
The
score at
momentum had
that point.
swung too much. It wasn't going to happen. Offensive line, one of the worst pass blocking setups I saw all game was on third down when they had the ball at the end. 77 left tackle just completely whiffs on Colin Simmons. He gets a free run at the quarterback. Just, it was awful. It was terrible. State loses his football game. Texas somehow claws back in the fourth quarter to make this a statement win and to set them back on track to possibly still be in contention, playoffs, and in the SEC. But I genuinely don't see that holding up for very long. Their schedule's tough down the road. They've still got to play Georgia and they've still got to play Texas A&M. I think they lose both of those games,
And
but
they're still going to play Vanderbilt this week.
the game that I'm most excited about is this week, and we'll get to it in a minute. They are taking on Diego Pavia in the Doors, one of the hottest teams in the country. This game was a lot of fun. I think this was probably one of the most exciting games of the entire week. Maybe not for State fans, but I thought it was really good. So I'm sure we'll end up revisiting that game at some point during the season. It's one of the better games we watched. All right, next, moving on to Illinois at Washington. This was my call the dogs pick for last week once again. The most cursed segment on this podcast because I can just not seem to ever get it right. So Washington goes and beats Illinois 42-25 at home, defending the home turf here. Damon Williams played an incredible football game. I thought that Luke Altmaier was going to bring his A game here and end up being the better quarterback. I do love Damon Williams. I was high on him in the preseason, but I just hadn't seen that game from him yet where I was like, wow, that's the guy I saw last season in big game settings. Because he didn't play all season last year, but he's a full time starter now. We just hadn't gotten that game yet. He played really well against Washington State, but it's Washington State. I just wasn't going to take too much from that. So dominant in this game. 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Luke Altmaier, a couple interceptions, did not have his brightest game. They actually regained the lead at a certain point in this game, and Washington had to claw back and then put them away again. So props to Washington for giving up the lead and retaking it significantly to win by double digits. I was very impressed. Jonah Coleman's still one of the best running backs in the country. I think he's got over 13 total touchdowns right now this season. He might be leading the FBS. If not, he's very close. He's a stud. Um, I like this Washington team. Illinois now with 3 losses, they're pretty much eliminated from anything potential down the season with the Big 12 championship, or Big 10 championship, or the playoffs, which I don't think anybody really envisioned them making it that far. But Washington's still alive with 2 losses.
I feel like Illinois was really exposed in that Indiana game. It's just having a pretty set ceiling for this season and just the team they are. I'm kind of seeing that unfold with them picking up a few more losses since then. And then for Washington, they have 3 extremely gettable games until they play host to Oregon in the final game of the year. So Washington, that could be a team that's 9-2 playing Oregon for a playoff spot at the end of the season.
And if anything, they could end up being, 8-3 going into that game, and they could play spoiler to Oregon's playoff hopes, which I think they'll probably be a one, maybe 2 loss team going into that game. So that game could be a playing game for two
Nine and
nine
two.
and two
Yeah.
teams. So that could be really interesting down the stretch. I think we kind of telegraphed Illinois as a paper tiger after that Indiana game, but I got false hope after they beat USC. I thought that that win meant something. This team did not really improve much after that. I think that was their ceiling. That game against USC was the best that they could do, and they needed a walk-off field goal to win that game. So they've got talent. Altmaier's played really good football since he got there after he left Ole Miss. I'm just impressed that he ended up doing what he's done there. He didn't really even stand a chance in our quarterback competition when he was at Ole Miss. For him to switch it around and go to all the way up north Illinois and play the ball he's been playing is impressive. So I'm happy he's had a good career so far. I hated that they didn't really get to do much postseason, but he definitely has done a lot for that program. I think that down the stretch they could still possibly play spoiler to some other teams, but I don't think they have any really big matchups before the end of the
They
season.
have 4 pretty easy games to close. There's a good chance they end up being 9-3.
Yeah, I know that the tail end of their schedule wasn't very hard from what I remember, and with a lot of these Big Ten teams, what we're seeing is the end of their schedules are pretty easy. Like Indiana, Ohio State, pretty much play nobody to end their seasons.
Yeah, Illinois gets Rutgers at home. They're favored by 2 touchdowns. That's this week. And then host Maryland, who's not very good. Go to the dumpster fire that is Wisconsin, and then host Northwestern.
Well, it sounds like we're going to see Illinois back in the Citrus Bowl as the defending champions. Not going to be seeing South Carolina there again this year. I'm sure they're happy about that, but probably end up seeing somebody like LSU there. So that could be an interesting game. But yeah, I think that'll wrap it up for Illinois at Washington. Next game we've got is Minnesota at Iowa. Let's make this quick. I didn't see this coming. The 41 points that Iowa put on the scoreboard in this game looks like a glitch to me still. I don't really understand it. They had a lot of special teams and defensive plays that kind of helped carry this number up a little bit, but offensively, this was probably their best outing of the season. Defensively, they shut down Minnesota, only allowing 3 points. So the final was 41-3. I, I thought this game was going to be so much closer. I felt good about Iowa winning it, but I thought it was going to be way closer.
Minnesota is just super weird and bipolar. They're a really tough team to understand. And as for Iowa, this is a good football team, and they can make a huge statement this weekend. They host Oregon.
Yeah, that game will be fun. I actually picked Iowa to go 10-2 preseason, and then I quickly shied away from ever talking about that because I thought they were so bad after seeing them start the season the way they did. Mark Gronowski legitimately was not throwing the ball at all. I was like, this team is not going to beat anybody good. And I saw the games they had left on the schedule, and that was before Penn State really had fallen off completely. I was like, yeah, they're going to get killed by Oregon and Penn State and all Indiana, all these other teams down the road. They're not going to win that many football games. Sure enough, they escaped with a loss to Iowa State and Indiana in close games, and they've played really well down the stretch in all these other matchups. Penn State proved to not be very competitive, or at least as competitive as we thought they would be. They only won by 1 point, but they were not the team we thought they were. So Iowa gets that huge win there. They may still win 10 games. I would not bet on it. If I had the ability to repick their schedule, I probably would still have them losing a game or two. But preseason, I had them beating Oregon. So I don't think that'll happen, but it always could. That their offense is gonna have to be consistent down the stretch, which I asking that from Iowa is ridiculous. So I don't expect that to be the case. But this is Iowa. They will find a way to win the games they're supposed to win and lose the games that everybody expects them to lose.
They actually play Oregon next week. I said that was this week. That's the 8th.
Yep. Yeah, that sounds right. But I think Oregon's gonna have too much offense for them. I don't see that game being going Iowa's way, at least. I don't think they'll be able to keep up. But Minnesota just got skull drug in this game. I figured Darius Taylor would play a lot bigger role for Minnesota. Did not see anything offensively from Minnesota in this game to give me any hope. Early in this game, it got out of hand, and it didn't look like they had a chance. Which, like you said last week in the preview, this Minnesota team, and you said it again tonight, super weird, super bipolar. I think that's got to go somewhere to the coaching. Like, got to be looking inwards at the program. PJ Fleck's been there for several
It
years
might be a
now.
little bit too comfortable with his job.
That's what I'm beginning to think. And I remember when he got there, he was a big coaching name. There are so many coaches floating around right now. It almost feels like a transfer portal for coaches right now with how many guys that are currently in that limbo stage that have spent time out of coaching, guys that have been fired, guys that are probably going to end up switching schools. It just depends, you know? So I see a lot of options for them maybe to switch their head coach. I don't know that they'll do that. They may be too comfortable with where they're at, but this team is not going to be playing for anything if they don't make some changes. They're not a competitive football team week in and week out. The team we saw against Nebraska last week was not the team that played Iowa this week. It was a completely different football team, which I just don't know how that shows up that way, but that's college football for you. So that pretty much concludes that game. The next game I've got is Ole Miss at Oklahoma. So I was all over this game. Obviously, with a little bit of bias included. I had Ole Miss winning this game in a close one. I had the final score being 31-30. Ole Miss ended up winning 34-26. What it came down to me was going to be the weapons for Ole Miss. I felt like across the board we had so much depth at wide receiver and tight end, and that proved to be the case. We had our third string tight end make two of the biggest plays in the game, forcing a fumble on special teams and scoring probably one of the game sealing touchdowns late in the game down in the goal line. I think the guy's name is Trace Bruckler. He came from New Mexico State, but he's barely played all this season. Daquan Wright and Caleb Odom and Luke Haas have been our main three go-to guys at tight end. So he may even be the tight end four on our roster, but he ended up being the impact player in this game. I was very impressed. At wide receiver, Winston Watkins, true freshman, stepped up and had his first 100-yard game. We had guys all over the place making plays. Daquan Wright's been one of our most consistent guys, and he didn't do much in this game, given he was not 100%. But our weapons ended up being the difference. Trinidad played another Trinidad game. He was a complete baller. Kawan Lacey had a really tough 77 rushing yards in this game, had a big touchdown run for Ole Miss. I think the biggest shocker for me was how inconsistent OU's offense was.
Outside of those two big plays they had that went for touchdowns, they really just couldn't sustain anything, and that was the difference.
Yeah, those
Y'all
two
were able to
plays were like
sustain
half their total
offense.
yards.
Yeah, y'all were able to sustain offense all day, and they just couldn't.
Yeah, it felt like after the first, I don't know, two quarters of this game going to halftime, Ole Miss was going to run away with it. I think it was like 22-10 or something crazy. We got the safety. It just felt like we were doing everything right, and we just needed to stop the explosives. Sure enough, they come out the half, and I think we were up 12 at one point after maybe swapping field goals with them, and they break off that big touchdown run. Should have been stopped in the backfield. Period. End of story. Bad tackling. He rips off a big one. That's just how it ended. And Oklahoma's offense really didn't do much outside of the big run and the big pass. I think they had a couple of sideline throws to Deion Burks, and I think that Centegna found one other big play in this game early, but I just didn't feel like John Mateer played his best ball. He's obviously still injured. He's struggling to get back into early season form. Their offense just, I don't know, was ever really that good. They obviously had problems running the ball early. We saw that in the first game against Illinois State. We're like, dang, this team can't run the ball against Illinois State. What's going to happen when they get into SEC play? And sure enough, up until they played South Carolina the week before last, they didn't do anything running the ball. So Texas whooped them because Texas controlled the game down into the very end where they were able to break it open for being a one-score game because OU couldn't run the ball. John Mateer was hurt and couldn't throw the ball, so they had nothing going for them offensively. Their defense was not good enough to hold up against a team that had the ball the whole game. And in this game, the same thing kind of happened. Ole Miss, it kind of seemed like they had the ball the whole game. I don't know the time possession numbers on this, but it just felt like Ole Miss had the ball for way too long. Their defense couldn't get off the field. Ole Miss put up more points and total yards on this defense than anybody has pretty much all season. So I was thoroughly impressed with the play calling from Lane Kiffin. He had several big calls on fourth down, and we even had some throws that got missed. There was a 3rd and 1 play where Trinidad had a wide open touchdown on a play fake. The whole defense sold out on a blitz, and we had Luke Haas wide open over the middle, and Trinidad overthrows a pretty easy touch pass. Not one you expect a guy like that to miss, but again, this guy's only been playing Division 1 quarterback for like 6 games, so you got to give him some breaks. He's played incredible, but Ole Miss had their chances to put this game away. They actually gave up a 9 point lead to give Oklahoma a 1 point lead in this game, and it looked like Ole Miss had just choked another really big 2 possession lead against an away ranked team. Typical Ole Miss fashion, right? I mean, like we're talking about Mississippi State. That just it's such a Mississippi thing.
Just
Whenever our
is.
teams get in a position to be successful, we screw it up. And I remember walking down the streets of Nashville watching that on my phone on YouTube TV, and I saw the touchdown they made to take the lead. I was like, "Yep, it's over. We choked, just like Georgia. We're not going to win." And of course, as the typical Ole Miss fan I am, I started to doubt Lane Kiffin's ability to win a football game when it came down to a one possession change. And he made the right calls. He put our players in the right positions, and I don't think there's a better coaching staff in the country offensively right now. Skill wise, I think there probably are more talented offenses out there, but I would take Ole Miss's coaching staff on offense over any staff in the country. It's single handedly winning us football games because our defense is so opportunistic and spotty that we cannot rely on them to do anything for us. They had big plays in this game, like the safety and the strip sack, but they are very spotty. So I thought this was a really huge win. I know a lot of people see it that way as to the evidence of how much people are talking about Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin and what that looks like moving forward, which we'll get into in a minute. But a lot to look forward to for Ole Miss if they don't end up dropping some games down the stretch. They're favored in all their remaining games, but as an Ole Miss fan, I've seen this happen before. We still got Florida on deck and South Carolina, and we got to go to Starkville, and most importantly, we have the Citadel. So we got to be prepared for that
That's
game.
the sketchiest one by far.
Absolutely. I think Lane Kiffin might have been on staff when they played Citadel in Alabama. I can't remember. For those of you that remember the Citadel Alabama game, they were tied with Bama at half, and everybody was freaking out. They ended up getting blown out, but it gets referenced all the time in the college football world. People only remember the Citadel for that. So Ole Miss will need to show up with their A game for that one. But yeah, I was very happy with this result as an Ole Miss fan. I'm just surprised we were able to pull that win out. All right, so moving on, we've got USF at Memphis. This game had huge playoff implications. We actually looked at going to this game. Would not have been a bad choice to go to this one, considering our streak of one possession games that we have been to. But USF drops this game as the favorite in Memphis, 34-31, giving up a 17-point lead to the Tigers. This one really shakes things up for me because I'm struggling to see Memphis being a playoff team. I think they're inconsistent. I think they have a good offense. I like Brandon Lewis most of the time, but I'm just shocked they were able to overcome Byron Brown and this USF team with kind of talent they've got. No, I think there's a disparity between those two teams, but Memphis showed up and they played better football this weekend.
I was not shocked by the results of this. Memphis always shows up in these big games, but they do always have those weird just slip up games during the season, like the week before against UAB. I mean, that's inexcusable to lose to a team like that. Memphis is much more talented than UAB, but they always get up for those big ones, and they were able to get a huge one here and push themselves back to the front of this playoff race. Probably them and Tulane, I would put at the front of that conversation right now.
Yeah, and that game's coming up. Be excited to go and watch that one if we do. Definitely looking at that. But regardless, I'll be tuning in for it. That should probably decide at least who's going to make it to the conference championship to play USF. But yeah, that this game was really exciting. I did pick USF. I was pretty confident in Byron Brown. He still played incredible football in this game. He had that one touchdown run that was just like I had my jaw on the floor. Like this dude's a freaking freak out athlete. Like I haven't seen anybody play football like this in a while. So we were talking about him like he's not going to be an NFL quarterback. We know that, but I see a real scenario where this dude plays in the UFL for a long time and terrorizes some average. um, talent in the UFL. I mean, he's a complete freak of nature, stud athlete, and I think he'll end up being the minor league Cam Newton if he ends up going to the UFL.
Need to see him in the crimson and gold in Birmingham.
That we will absolutely go watch him in a Stallions game if he goes there. That would be stinking fun, man. I think he is a senior, so this should be his last year of eligibility, but you never know these days. So enjoyed watching a little bit of this game. I might have to go back and watch a little bit more of the highlights. I mainly got to see the first part of this game, and then we tuned in at the very end to see what Memphis was going to do. So big playoff implications there. Memphis moving up their chances heavily after this win. Next game we got Kansas State at Kansas, and I personally did not see this one coming. Landon, I think you pointed out that this rivalry has been very lopsided as of the past 15 years.
16 years, now 17 years.
I did not take that into account when I made this pick. Not that that really matters too much because at the end of the day, the teams that are playing this year are not the teams that played last year. But Kansas State's been hot over the past couple of weeks, and Kansas has been kind of hot and cold. So we didn't really know what Kansas we were going to get in this game, and we found out pretty quickly.
We got the garbage Kansas that is Kansas State's little brother in this one.
Yeah, I think Lance Leipold is probably not very happy with how they played in this game. Jalen Daniels, being the veteran that he is, I think you just expect more from this team. I mean, they had high expectations. I say high expectations, like probably 8 or 9 wins, but that's not looking very feasible right now. I think they're 4-4.
Yeah, they're
So
4-4.
I don't see them winning more than 7 games this season. They've got a decent offense, but defense is not good. They're very inconsistent. Avery Johnson had a great game. I'm very shocked that this team has turned things around the way they have, and not that they're really that great, but to go from almost losing to North Dakota at home on a current, I think they were 0-3 at that point because they lost to Army.
They were 0-2, I think.
So that
Or no, I think they lost to Army the next week.
all I know is that it was bad. So those first 4 games in whatever order they happened in, they were all bad. That might as well have been a loss to North Dakota, which is still a decent FCS squad, but it was bad. And I didn't think this team had a chance in conference play. As soon as conference play started, I thought this team was dead in the water. But with how much time is left in the season, you can never really rule out anything. UCLA is a perfect example of that. Even though we'll get to that game in a minute, they've won a lot of games they shouldn't have won at this point in the season. So this game was a complete surprise to me. Going forward, I think we're gonna have to take Kansas State seriously as a possible giant killer, especially this weekend.
They might turn into kind of what Kansas was last year, just taking down conference contenders at the end of the year. So
Well, that's the Big 12 for you, so that would not surprise me
it
at all.
loves to just cannibalize itself and take down its best teams.
Yeah, and they're going to be playing Texas Tech this weekend, so there's no telling what's going to happen. Vegas is all over this
It's
game.
only a touchdown spread.
Only a touchdown spread, and this is the same team that lost to Army and almost lost to North Dakota, playing against the team that his average margin of victory is probably like 30 points. So unbelievable that the line's where it is, but there's a reason for it. Moving on, we got BYU at Iowa State. BYU ends up coming back in this game, being down several scores to win 41-27. I have to just go ahead and say it. I have been the biggest BYU hater all season. I have not picked BYU in a single game that we've covered, and every time that I pick against them, they prove me wrong. They're still undefeated. Bear Bachmeyer is continuing to play better each week that passes on. He's one of the best freshmen currently in college football, and this team is proving they may be one of the only consistent teams in the Big 12 right now.
BYU takes their opponent's mistakes and beats them with it, and that was definitely the case in this game. I think BYU had no turnovers and Iowa State had four.
Yeah,
So that
Rocco
was
Becht had 3 interceptions. I'm pretty sure he
yeah,
did
that
not
was
play
the
well.
the main difference in this one.
Yeah, this style of complementary football that we've harped on with BYU, I mean, it's really frustrating. I can imagine as a coaching staff and as players when you play against a team and yeah, you screw up, everybody screws up, but then they turn right back around and make you pay for it almost every single time. Regardless of if they're the better team physically or talent wise, the way that they're coached and how sound they are mechanically, they play some of the most complimentary football in the sport. And if you are on a bad day playing against BYU, they will make you pay for it. So very interesting moving forward to see what they can do. I'm going to try not to pick against them as the season goes on, but I still feel like they're probably going to drop a game or two. They have hit the late part of their season where their schedule gets a little harder. I'm going to try to give them the benefit of the doubt more, but right now, uh, we'll see. But big win against Iowa State, knocking them out of the Big 12 title race pretty much. They're 5-3 now. I don't see them really having a chance moving forward there.
They play Arizona State this week, so whoever loses that game is definitely cooked from having any even outside chance of making it.
Yeah, Sam Levitt has been ruled out of that game, so we will not be seeing him play. This is like the third or fourth week in a row they've had one of their major players be ruled out of the game. So I don't anticipate them being able to win that game with Jeff Sims. He's physically incapable of running an offense that is not the triple option. So, all right, Texas A&M at LSU. Final score in Death Valley was 49-25. That rolls off my tongue like music. Gosh, I wish we could just talk about this game all night, but we'll try to keep it pretty brief. This game got Brian Kelly fired, as we know at this point. I think we'll probably be releasing this probably on a Wednesday. So he was fired as of Sunday afternoon. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was I think it was Sunday night. It's around like
Sunday night.
7 to 8 o'clock, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I saw the rumblings kind of stirring up, and I figured what was going to happen was going to happen, and sure enough, it did. We've been talking about this on the pod for the past couple of weeks. Just when it got to the boiling point with them losing to Ole Miss, and possibly being overrated, people started to catch on. They're like, okay, we might want to start recalculating here, like what this could look like if he starts losing games. And we were on that. I saw more games being lost in the future. There are a lot of other people who kind of called that, like, yeah, LSU's not done losing games. Sure enough, they go into Nashville and they drop that one. That was what kind of started to get the pot boiling
That
over.
started the slide to where we are now.
Yeah, and really, I think that was the catalyst of it all because this game was, I don't really think at any point ever going to be won by LSU. They were not the better team really in any stage of the game. Maybe in the secondary they had A&M beat. That's probably it. I just don't see a scenario where A&M loses this game if they play it 9 more times. Maybe there's one.
No, I mean the fact that A&M had two just fatal turnovers in the first half, and they were only down 18-14, I think it was. Were
Yeah,
they
18 to 14
LSU
at
was
half.
winning at halftime? Yeah, like they came out and played clean in the second half. A&M did and just dominated. And if you take away those two mistakes they made in the first half, this might have been just a massacre the whole time. But yeah, A&M just a much better team than LSU. And I kind of feel like I saw this coming from LSU. Maybe not Brian Kelly getting fired and all that, but after watching two games of theirs, like I saw them against Clemson, thought they were good after that, and then Clemson kind of exposed themselves, and then LSU showed that their offense wasn't great in their next game, and I was kind of like, I don't know about this team anymore. I don't really trust them, and they've just fallen off a cliff since then, losing in any game that was supposed to be a close one for them.
Yeah, I mean, watching them play against Southeastern Louisiana and Louisiana Tech and be as lackluster as they were, and I know they put up 56 against CeeLo, but I just, that whole first half just felt gross
They had
watching
like
it.
3 yards per carry or something against them. Like that's just
4 or 5 yards per play. They were just dinking and dunking down the field. I was like, this team can't push the ball down the field against freaking Sela. Like, what are they going to do when they get an SEC play? I guess we were going to find out. And we sure enough did. The next week after their bye, when they come to Oxford, I mean, yeah, they had a couple of complete coverage bust plays. Like that play to Xavier Thomas was just, it should have been a hospital ball. He ends up breaking away for a big play.
that's their whole offense though, is really
Yeah,
just those big pop plays and
happened against
that's it.
Vanderbilt. He threw a duck, complete garbage throw to same guy, Xavier Thomas, and he takes it to the house. Does all the work. Garrett Nussmeier single-handedly handicapped this team with his inability to move the ball with his legs and move in the pocket. He's a sitting duck back there. And I felt terrible about this game solely because of Cassius Howell. I think he's got 10 and a half sacks on the season after this game. That dude was living in the backfield in this game. Whether he got as many sacks and TFLs as I think he did, just felt like he had a ton. It was the presence of knowing that he was going to be there the whole game. Garrett Nussmeier never was comfortable. He never had a chance in this game to be comfortable. And I mean, it was just it was ugly. At any point in this game, even when LSU was leading, I never felt like they were going to win. Even with the
No, I
4-point
mean,
lead at half, I felt like they were still going to lose.
just their lead was really only built up on A&M mistakes, and once A&M stopped supplying them with those mistakes, it was A&M's
Yeah,
game.
two interceptions in the first half and a blocked punt for a safety, and they're only up 4, 18 to 14, which is literally like that's the final score they wanted in the game.
Yeah.
LSU would have been so okay if it was 18 to 14 final, but when you're playing a team like A&M, if you can hold them to less than 28 points, that should be a victory in and of itself. Casey Concepcion had another great game with two touchdowns, one special teams touchdown, and then Marcel Reed had over 100 rushing yards in this game, terrorizing LSU's defense another season in a row. I'm sure that coaching staff did not look forward to seeing him on the field again this year, but Texas A&M took over that stadium after the game. I don't know if you saw the footage
I
of
saw
the
it.
fans and the team and the coaching staff. The whole the whole stadium got emptied. All the LSU fans left by the end of the fourth quarter with time still on the clock, and they were doing all their chants and their fight songs, and there was not a purple or gold or white jersey or really anything like that in the stadium that even resembled it being the home of the LSU Tigers. It looked like it could have been College Station if you painted it maroon. So it was pretty neat. I've never seen Death Valley look that dead. So if I ever get to a point where I need to see LSU lose and they're playing really good football again, I'll just go rewatch that game because it was pretty fun for me. But Brian Kelly gets fired. LSU's in the pits right now. I don't know how they're going to respond. I don't know how you do respond at this point. Um, the coaching staff, I don't know who's going to get retained and who's not. It'll all depend on who gets hired there. So much speculation on what their options are right now. I'm hearing people say that they're trying to push Nick Saban back out of retirement.
Not
That's
happening.
BS. It's not going to happen. He has nothing to prove. I don't think there's an amount of money in the world that Nick Saban needs to go back and try to convince 17-year-olds that $1 million is enough money for them to come play for Nick Saban.
I think he left college football because of the direction he saw it going.
He,
So why would he want to jump back in now
I
when it's
agree.
accelerated even more since he left?
He proved everything he needed to prove as it was, winning a national championship at LSU and then winning like six at Alabama. I don't know why on earth you would want to come back to a sport that's changed from when you were in your prime and coached the way that you used to coach with your process. The process has changed, and Nick Saban does not enjoy the process. So why on earth would he come back? There's no amount of money that can force you to do something that you don't love anymore. And I say that's probably not fair. There definitely is an amount of money, but in this scenario, when you already have it like Nick does, I don't know why he would come back. I just think that he's sick of trying to convince players that they need $1 million to go play for him. That's stupid. I mean, and yeah, in the old college football, there was definitely an underbelly. There was money getting passed around. That's for sure. But Nick Saban didn't have to convince every single 3 and 4 star recruit that came into his building on a visit that he could give them enough money for them to stay for a year. It's ridiculous. That's just where we are with college football. I don't think he cares for it. I think that they have a better chance of getting Lane Kiffin than they do Nick Saban for sure, because Nick Saban is retired. He's not coming back. Lane Kiffin, at the same time, I'm very conflicted. I don't know how I feel about this as an Ole Miss fan that he's being talked about as much as he is, but I don't think that LSU fans should be as confident as they're being about getting him. I think they pretty much already assumed that when the season's over, he'll be the head coach of Baton Rouge. I don't know that it's that cut and dry.
And Florida's thinking the same thing too.
Well,
Like we
it's
got
just
two
little
fan
brother at
bases.
this point for
Florida's been
LSU.
doing this for like a couple years though. It's just comical, like the stuff I
Yeah,
see from their fan base. Like they just have to be trolling or rage baiting. It's just terrible.
it's bad. I mean, first it was Auburn, and Lane Kiffin turned them down. I think that Florida never really had a chance. As soon as LSU opened up, I think that is the only one that was going to get considered. Unless Alabama magically fired Kalen DeBoer, I don't think that Lane Kiffin was going to look at another job. So, with that being said, I think that conversation will probably be visited in the offseason or after Ole Miss makes their exit from the playoffs. So, we will revisit that. That's going to be an interesting storyline to follow. Hopefully, Ole Miss as a whole can stay locked in and not get distracted by the noise and maybe make a run at the playoffs and not choke away a completely favored remaining schedule. So, that'll do it for the LSU A&M recap. All right, last game I had on the Week 9 recap was Houston at Arizona State. This game was kind of interesting to me because I thought that it would be really close for one. Jordan Tyson was hurt and did not play. But I figured Arizona State would be on the winning side of this game being at home. And Connor Wakeman took this game over. He played his best ball of the season, in my opinion. And ASU just didn't have anything on offense. No Cam Scadaboo, no Jordan Tyson, injured Sam Levitt. It was probably the worst outcome for Arizona State in this game as far as the players that were not on the field. I know Cam Scadaboo's in the NFL, I'm not stupid, but they're still missing him. It's very obvious. Raleek Brown has been really good, but he's nowhere near the player that Cam Scadaboo was, and it's just so hard to replace that kind of void on a roster. Um, Gotta give props to Houston, being where they are right now at 7-1. I'm thoroughly impressed. I did not see that coming. We've talked about Willie Fritz in his second year as a head coach has been very successful where he's been up to this point. I just didn't think he was going to be able to do it in a very cannibalistic conference with the schedule they had, and I didn't see it coming. But they're going to probably give people some trouble down the stretch. Their schedule's not too hard with the remaining games they got left. We might be looking at seeing them in the conference championship if things go crazy enough. But I think that Sam Levitt being not healthy in this game and Jordan Tyson being out was probably the catalyst in this being a win for Houston.
Arizona State is just not to be trusted when they're missing one of their key guys. I mean, we saw that in the Utah game and last year as well. In another game, Sam Levitt missed against I think it was Cincinnati. They went out there and lost. But when they're missing their dudes, they're just not the same.
Yeah, especially when Jeff Sims is the guy taking the snaps. It's more than just not missing a guy. It's the whole offense has changed. You can't even get the ball to your good guys that are still on the field when Jeff Sims is the quarterback. When they played Utah, Jordan Tyson was still on the field, but how are you going to give him the ball if Jeff Sims can't throw farther than 10 yards down the field and complete a pass? So that's unfortunate. This team's got a lot of talent. This team actually had the most returning roster talent of all teams in college football this year, and they already have three losses. So if that does not tell us that returning talent really doesn't play that much of a factor, I don't know what does.
Clemson, they were
Clemson's a
like in
great
the top
example.
5 in that too, and that's been jack nothing.
We could talk about this all night because there's so many other teams I could point to, but those two stick out the most to me. I think we got to keep looking at Houston moving forward. Arizona State's still going to win football games, though. When they have all their guys healthy, they will beat some teams. So I would not want to be playing them when they're fully healthy because they have nothing to lose. That's a pretty scary team to play. And the last game I wanted to hit on real quick was Indiana against UCLA. There's not much to say about this game other than that Indiana is still a extremely dominant football team. Kurt Signetti and the squad are on pace to have an undefeated season for the first time in school history. So I fully anticipate this matchup with Ohio State in the Big Ten championship being probably one of the best matchups we'll see all season. I don't know who the better team is right now. I'm leaning Ohio State, but with a veteran quarterback Fernando Mendoza, we may see a slight edge there offensively for Indiana, and we'll see what this Ohio State defense is really made of when that game rolls around. But unfortunately for UCLA, the magic runs out. Neuheisel and this team have strung together three huge wins after starting 0-4. I'm excited to keep watching them. This will be their probably the toughest game they had left on their schedule. So maybe they can pull off a couple more wins. But 56-6, they got skull drug. It was bad.
Yeah, they just ran into an absolute buzzsaw in Indiana. I don't think they're done winning games though. It's still a team with fight in it, so I don't think they're finished. But Indiana just so good. They are 100% the real deal. They're not a faker like last year. This is a legitimate team that could win it all.
Yeah, and they were already so good in the trenches last year. They've improved there. The the thing that's the biggest difference for this team is quarterback, obviously. He's elevated the play of the receivers that they had last year. And Curtis Work was a great quarterback, but he was more of a game manager. Mendoza can make throws on the field that Curtis Rourke has never dreamed of making. So that changes everything from offensive play calling standpoint. This team is more aggressive, they're more balanced, and you have to defend them completely differently now. So creating a lot of havoc in this conference, and I fully anticipate them to run the table.